In the year 2000, a group of Cornell researchers made college students wear the most embarrassing t-shirt they could find, a giant Barry Manilow face, right on the chest. Then they sent them into a room full of strangers. Before walking in, the students made a guess. How many people in that room will notice this shirt? Their answer, almost half the room, 50%. The real number, 23%. Less than a quarter of people even looked. But the shirt wearer walked in feeling like every single eye was locked onto their chest. And this exact feeling, it's happening to you right now. Every time you replay that awkward thing you said, every time you assume someone noticed, someone judged, someone remembers. Here's the uncomfortable truth. They probably don't. And the reason why is one of the strangest blind spots in human psychology. Think about the last time you tripped in public, or laughed too loud in a quiet room, or sent a text with an embarrassing typo to the wrong person. What happened next? If you're like most people, you replayed it over and over. You wondered who saw, who's judging you right now, whether they're telling someone else about it. But here's the question nobody asks. Why does your brain do this? Why does one small slip-up feel like a 5-alarm social emergency? Psychologists have a name for this. It's called the spotlight effect. It's a cognitive bias where you overestimate how much other people actually notice your appearance, your mistakes, your awkward moments. You feel like there's a spotlight on you at all times. In reality, nobody's holding the light. Nobody's even looking. Here's why this happens. You are the center of your own universe. Every thought, every feeling, every embarrassing moment, you experience it at full volume. So your brain assumes everyone else must be experiencing it at that same volume too. This is called egocentric bias. Your brain uses your own intense self-awareness as a starting point. Then it tries to adjust downward to account for how others might see it differently. But that adjustment, it's almost always too small. That's exactly what happened with the Barry Manilow shirt. The wearer's self-awareness was maxed out, so their brain assumed everyone else's awareness was maxed out too. It wasn't even close. Think about how often this plays out in your own life. You show up to work with a coffee stain on your shirt, and it feels like the only thing anyone can see. You stumble over one word in a presentation, and suddenly that's all you can think about for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, the people around you barely clocked it. They were checking their notifications, thinking about lunch, running their own internal monologue about their own imperfections. That's the part that's easy to miss. Everyone is starring in their own movie. In your movie, you're the main character, and every flaw feels like a plot twist. But in everyone else's movie, you're an extra, barely a background detail. But here's where it gets interesting. This bias doesn't just affect what people see, it affects what they don't see. And one experiment proves this in the strangest way possible. Researchers at Dartmouth ran a study. They applied a realistic-looking scar to female participants' faces using makeup, a visible, noticeable scar. Right before the participants walked into interviews, the makeup artist did something sneaky. They wiped the scar completely off. Gone. No trace left. But the participants didn't know that. They walked into their interviews believing the scar was still there. And afterward, they reported something disturbing. Their interviewers seemed tense, uncomfortable. They kept staring at the scar. Except there was no scar to stare at. Their brain had constructed an entire false reality. Every neutral glance became proof that people were judging their flaw, a flaw that didn't even exist. This is what the spotlight effect does to you every single day. It takes your internal insecurity and projects it onto the outside world, convincing you it's real. Now something surprising happens. This bias goes even deeper than appearance. It convinces you that your internal feelings are visible too. Ever been nervous and felt like everyone could see it? Your racing heart, your sweaty palms, your shaky voice. Psychologists call this the illusion of transparency, and it's been tested in a fascinating way. In one study, researchers had people lie to a group, then guess how many people would catch the lie. The liars predicted that nearly half the room would catch them, 48.8%. The real number, 25.6%. Barely better than a random guess. There's another layer to this. Researchers ran a separate experiment where people tapped out the rhythm of a famous song using just their fingers. No sound, just tapping. The tappers were confident that listeners would easily recognize the song because in their own head, they could hear the full melody playing perfectly. The listeners, they just heard random, disconnected thumps. No melody, no song, nothing. This is the gap between what's happening inside your head and what other people actually perceive. It's massive, and it explains why you feel so exposed, even when you're not. What most people don't realize is that there's actually a built-in relief valve for all of this. It's called the next in line effect. Here's how it works. In situations where people take turns, like presentations, meetings, or classroom activities, something strange happens to memory. People consistently forget what happened right before and right after their own turn. Why? Because as your turn approaches, your brain becomes completely consumed with preparing yourself. There's no attention left over to actually watch anyone else, which means in the exact moments you feel most watched, the room is doing the opposite. They're inward focused, wrapped up in their own upcoming spotlight, too busy rehearsing their own lines to notice yours. This changes everything. That mistake you're still replaying in your head from 3 years ago, the people around you were probably too consumed with their own anxiety to even register it in the first place. There's another layer worth sitting with here. Think back to a moment where you were convinced someone was judging you. Now try to remember honestly the last time you judged a stranger for a small mistake and still remembered it a week later. You probably can't, because that's not how attention works. Ours is limited, self-focused, and fleeting. The same rule that applies to you applies to everyone else too. It just doesn't feel that way in the moment. So why does the brain do this to us? Why build in a bias this exaggerated? It goes back to survival. For most of human history, being rejected by your tribe wasn't just uncomfortable, it was deadly. No group meant no protection, no food, no safety. So your brain developed something psychologists call a sociometer, an internal alarm system built to protect your standing within the group. The problem is, that alarm system was built for tribal life, not for modern life. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, still can't tell the difference between an actual tribal dispute and an awkward comment you made in a meeting, so it treats both the exact same way, overreacting to social slips that in reality barely register. Here's a simple tool to keep this in check whenever it creeps in. It's called the SPOT framework. Stop. Recognize that the feeling of being watched is coming from inside you, not from outside evidence. Perspective shift. Actively redirect your attention outward. Remember, everyone around you is dealing with their own version of the same spotlight. Observe. Look for actual proof. Are people staring? Or are they on their phones, thinking about their own lives? Test it. Do something slightly imperfect on purpose. Wear something a little unusual. Say something a little off. Watch how little actually happens. Here's the truth this entire video has been building toward. There is no spotlight. There never was. It was built by you, powered by you, and it can be turned off by you. And once you actually see that, something shifts. You stop editing yourself before you speak. You stop replaying that one comment from a group chat 3 days later. You stop assuming that a single bad moment defines how people see you, because you finally understand that most people were never watching that closely in the first place. The spotlight wasn't real. It was a story your brain wrote to keep you safe, running on outdated software built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. The next time you catch yourself spiraling over something small you did, remember the Barry Manilow shirt. Remember the scar that wasn't even there. You are not being watched nearly as closely as you think, and the sooner you believe that, the freer you become. If this shifted something for you, let me know in the comments. Which one of these hit you the hardest?